Welcome to the Fasting Podcast, Wow, Wellness and Optimal Weight. I'm your host, Julie Phillips, certified natural health professional for 2 decades, bringing you episode 136, GMO or BioEngineered foods. Now, I will say there really was no episode 135 because it was an announcement that we were changing the schedule of new episodes to be monthly on the second Tuesday of the month at 5 a.m. So that's the new schedule. And now let's get into GMO or bioengineered foods. GMO means genetically modified organisms. And the definition of bioengineered, the newer terminology, they refer to it as BE, bioengineered, from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They say, and I quote, "Those that contain detectable genetic material that has been modified through lab techniques and cannot be created through conventional breeding or found in nature." So this is science and laboratory intervention, typically to make more food cheaper. GMO is basically the same as bioengineered, but the new terminology of BE for bioengineered has more loopholes. So when they label things as bioengineered, there's a lot more reasons why they don't have to label it with the new January 2022 new labeling laws that switch the GMO term to bioengineered. About 75% or more of processed foods in the United States contain GMO ingredients, and the USDA list of BE ingredients include things like alfalfa, Arctic apple, canola, corn, cotton, some eggplant, ring spot virus-resistant papaya, pink pineapple, potato, Aqua Advantage salmon. So if it's not organic, natural salmon, it means it may have been modified in the laboratory, soybean, summer squash, sugar beets. And also the spin-off products from these types of ingredients include as GMO or bioengineered, if you see on the label, cornstarch, corn syrup, canola oil. This is a really terrible one, high fructose corn syrup. And we did an episode on glycation that prematurely ages us and can lead to blood sugar, insulin challenges. High fructose corn syrup can increase the rate of glycation 10 times. And it's in tons of foods that you wouldn't even guess it might be in it. Granulated sugar, soybean oil. The new BE labels will appear on processed food and others. For example, soda, baked goods, frozen meals, tofu, dressings with vegetable oil, cereals, sweetened juices, canned soups, and bioengineered food, the ones which are GMO with loopholes, the labeling exemptions, meaning they don't have to proclaim that it's a BE food on it with the new January 2022 law, include things like highly refined sugars and oils that don't exceed the USDA detectability thresholds. You remember we mentioned detectable. Foods made with primarily meat, eggs, or poultry, listed as the first ingredient. Foods with broth, water, and stock, primarily listed as the first ingredient. And believe it or not, smaller companies with sales less than $2.5 million per year do not have to label. So instead of labeling, some of the companies are allowed to use just a phone number, one of those little square barcodes, or a website. So you really don't have a clue on many of these bioengineered or GMO foods. Now, the big leader in genetically modified is Monsanto, and they're so proud that they have so many different products called Roundup Ready. And Roundup Ready means the farmers can spray tons and tons and tons of this on their crops, and it'll kill the weeds, but it won't kill the plant. So what does this mean? We're getting lots more potential herbicide, pesticide, Roundup type things into our food and into our bodies. Now, officially, it's portrayed as safe, where they do maybe a 3-month study saying this is safe. And by the way, attorney Michael Taylor of Monsanto actually works for the FDA overseeing GMO. So The little politics may be happening there, or maybe a lot. Natural health advocates believe there's solid evidence that it may contribute to health challenges such as allergies, suppressing the immune system, resistance to antibiotics, toxicity, big deal, which can affect weight, cancer risk, because these chemicals are fake estrogens and can signal growth in the body. So when you take this stuff long enough, your risk of cancer could increase. Infertility, nutrient loss, accelerated aging for sure, insulin dysregulation, organ and digestive malfunction. Now here's a quote from the Institute of Science in Society. It is clear that genetic modification is inherently hazardous as it invariably results in unpredictable and uncontrollable changes in the genome and the epigenome, which is the pattern of gene expression, that impact on safety. GMO foods are actually, this is horrible, fed to the animals that are in our food supply. They give input. So the genetically modified foods go in the chickens. We not only eat chicken meat, some of us, but also eat eggs and that type of thing. So it's really hidden that we're getting a lot of GMO in us. Toxicity effects are internals. For example, the liver, who's trying to deal with that, and it can absolutely deter weight loss. We did a recent episode on how toxins are related to weight loss. Now, what I want to do is share with you some of the horrible results observed on animals by the IRT, Institute for Responsible Technologies. So I'm going to go through some of these, but just to give you a feel for how terrible it is. Rats were fed potatoes engineered to produce their own insecticide, developed potentially precancerous cell growth in the digestive tract. It inhibited the development of their brains, livers, and testicles, partial atrophy of the liver, enlarged pancreases and intestines, and immune system damage. 7 out of 20 rats fed the GM Flavor Saver tomato for 28 days developed stomach lesions, in other words, bleeding stomachs. Another 7 of 40 died within 2 weeks and were replaced in the study. Rats fed the Monsanto's MON 863BT corn for 90 days showed significant changes in their blood cells, their liver, kidney. Mice fed the GM BT potatoes experienced intestinal damage. A quarter of sheep died after grazing in GM BT cotton fields for a week. 1 week. Over 20 farmers in North America report pigs and cows became sterile from genetically modified corn. 12 dairy cows on a farm in Germany, after being fed a diet with significant amounts of a single GM corn variety, they died, 12 of them. The liver cells of mice fed Roundup Ready soybeans showed significant changes, and the list goes on, so including inflammatory, allergic type issues. So check that out, because it's really horrifying that these kinds of things could be happening to humans if used long enough. And apparently it doesn't take too long to cause some potential damage. We talked about the Roundup Ready crops. Well, what's the real ingredient in the Roundup that's so toxic? It's called glyphosate. Extremely toxic. And glyphosate kills friendly flora, your probiotics in the body, allows pathogens to overgrow. It chelates or pulls out your important minerals like iron, cobalt, manganese. It interferes with synthesis of aromatic amino acids and methionine, leading to critical shortages of critical neurotransmitters and folate. So if your doctor tells you you're, low on iron or you're low on folate, it could be your diet. It interferes with the function of cytochrome P450, which CYP enzymes. It disrupts sulfate synthesis and sulfate transport. And as I mentioned before, it mimics estrogen. So it's a xenoestrogen, a fake estrogen that gets in our body and can signal growth and increase cancer risk. foods are so rampant with GMO nowadays, it's very alarming. For example, 93% of soy is GMO, 90% of corn is GMO, and these are in the U.S., 94% of cotton is GMO. And some people actually may eat 30,000 different GMOs per day. So let's take some action. Let's do what we can. Choose organic whenever possible, like most all the time. If you can, choose organic, certified organic when possible. Avoid processed foods and avoid GMO foods, including non-organic dairy, non-organic meats. And remember, the animals are eating the GMO foods, so you have to really be careful. And avoid the most common GMO products that we mentioned earlier. Here's one you may not think of. Consume cruciferous vegetables to help, for example, kale, to help the liver dislodge the herbicides that are stuck and accumulating in the body. And finally, this is so awesome, grow your own garden or buy from local farmers that you talk to. Now, I'm going to give you an example. I very recently spoke with a farmer. He was from a different area, but he was so brainwashed that he told me they don't do any GMO. His specialty is corn. He's proud that he has Roundup Ready corn, but no, he doesn't do any genetically modified at all. So even some of the farmers do not understand what is going on. So that was very sad to me for him to be talking about Roundup Ready and saying he never does any genetically modified. He said genetically modified really means growing plants that can help each other very close together or even splicing them together, and no laboratory invention that he knows of is going on. So when you talk to your farmers that are local to you, they may not really know the real scoop. For questions and feedback, contact me, Julie, at JP Wow Programs. That's the website where you can find the slides from the different episodes. Please refer others to the podcast YouTube. And remember, stay positive, focused, and determined, because where the mind goes, energy flows.